Haha. Oh my god, good morrow, and welcome back to my theatrical YouTube channel. I'm not going to be able to sustain this for the duration of the review. Excuse me. Oh my god, hey, welcome back to my theatre-themed YouTube channel. My name is MickeyJo, and I'm obsessed with all things theatre. I do not usually dress like this. I do evidently own these clothes, that's on me. But I am wearing this today because I'm going to be bringing you my full review of the West End comedy, The Crown Jewels, or as they pronounce it so often in this play, The Crown Jewels, 'cause royalty. This show has been running over the summer at the Garrick Theatre in the West End. It stars comedians Al Murray and Mel Gierdeoyc, alongside musical theatre star Carrie Hope Fletcher, and a host of other well-known performers as well. We will be talking about all of them in today's review. And while it is only in London for a few more weeks, it is going to be touring to a handful of venues after the West End run ends, so bear that in mind. Now, this review is coming quite late in this show's run, and I've had so many messages and comments and questions about whether or not I would be reviewing it. And I wasn't able to review it when it first opened, I think because I was in Edinburgh or about to go to Edinburgh. In any case, to be completely transparent with you, I was invited to the show's press launch. I got to interview the cast. I got to see a little snippet of it, and that snippet looked very exciting. And then the opening rolled around and there was no press night invitation, which is fine. I don't expect to get invited to everything. However, it's unusual to get invited to the media event and then not to the show. Unless, of course, it's a show that wants the publicity prior to its opening but doesn't necessarily want you to come and review. They ended up having a gala night performance. It was meant to be a press night, but that, I believe, got scrapped, and they invited the press to then come in on different days, and the press did not love this show. It was called Forgettable Stuff, Lackluster, and a comedy that lacks sparkle. And it got a handful of 2-star reviews. So when the opportunity arose to grab some tickets to go and see the play later that month, I, by this point, was what we might call morbidly curious. Often in the past, I've been enticed to see things because of bad reviews. I'm very curious as to whether it's just me disagreeing with critics. I've loved shows that have had 2-star reviews from different critics before. It's no guarantee that I am going to agree with those critics. And also, because I'd seen the little preview of it that looked so funny and quite exciting, I was like, what happened to this show in between that rehearsal and getting to the West End stage that went so wrong? Today, we will answer that question. So buckle up for today's full review of The Crown Jewels and its all-star cast. But before we do, here is a brief message from this video's sponsor. So this play is all about a heist, and while we may not all have the crown jewels of England stashed away in a cupboard, something we all have reason to be concerned about is cybersecurity, and that's just one of the reasons to consider today's sponsor, Atlas VPN. Right now, Atlas VPN Premium is running a limited time summer deal where you can get it for just $1.83 per month with 3 months extra and a 30-day money-back guarantee, making it the most affordable VPN on the market. This is a limited time offer for the software, which will allow you to prevent ads and malware. You can protect unlimited devices. Not only that, but it also has features which will save you money while you're shopping online, whether that's looking at subscription services like Netflix or even hotels and airfare. You can also use it to unlock all of your favorite content from all over the world that is location specific. And as theatre fans, I know you know how painful it is when one of your favorite shows is being streamed in a different country. So if you want to protect your digital privacy as well as enjoying all of the other benefits I've just mentioned for a ridiculously low price, click on the link in the description. If you're interested, make sure to grab it quick because the $1.83 per month price is a limited time offer. Now let's get back to today's review. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure to subscribe to my theatre-themed YouTube channel for plenty more stagey reviews coming very soon about all of your favorite shows. And if you have seen this play already in the West End, comment down below and let us know what you thought, especially if your opinion ends up being different to mine. But for now, it's time to hear what I thought of The Crown Jewels. So this comedy play has been written by Simon Nye, it's directed by Sean Foley, it features a handful of compositions from the musician Grant Alding, and it takes place during the reign of the Merry Monarch King Charles II, who is busy doing away with all of the dull remains of Oliver Cromwell. He's reopening the theatres and enjoying in lavish celebration, and he is about to have this big coronation where he is thrilled to be once again wearing his crown jewels. But not if 17th century rebel Colonel Blood has anything to do about it. So what this play is a comic retelling of this actual historical event where this Irish revolutionary dude, who made a big name for himself in terms of treason, plotted to, and successfully did, steal the crown jewels of King Charles II. What's notable about this is that it highlighted that at this time, the crown jewels of England were only actually kept safe by virtually being stored in a cupboard where they were looked after by a 77-year-old man. Very little security. Now, it's at this point of the video that I would normally explain a show's plot to you, but honestly, that's it. We meet King Charles II. He is giddy and excitable as he approaches his coronation. He's a little bit short-tempered, he's more than a little bit out of touch with the public, and he enjoys lying with various different women. You'll notice how much the monarchy has changed in the centuries that followed. But he breaks the fourth wall and chats with the audience about how excited he is to wear his crown jewels. Then we cut to Colonel Blood and his co-conspirators who plot to steal the crown jewels. They go and stake out the crown jewels, they come up with a heist plan, they execute the heist plan, they steal the crown jewels, but then they get arrested and they get thrown in jail, and then he pleads with King Charles to let him go free, and that's basically the whole show. There's a French ambassador at some point who exists only so that Mel Gierdeoyc, who is hilarious, has another character to play, but we purely just riff around that concept. And it's a weird chapter of history to adapt for a comedy, because it feels a little bit insubstantial. Sure, we have the heist element, and there's a little bit of comedy that you can bring out of that, but it was also this fairly bloody act of treason, so it's not the most naturally hilarious thing to adapt. Nor is it a particularly well-known chapter of history unless you're a well-versed historian, like the comedian Al Murray also happens to be. But what ends up happening is, with one hand, they try and explain and deliver us this plot and actually tell us about what's going on, and in the other, they try and parody it and make fun of it. This is by no means a sincere historical retelling. This is meant to be a silly farcical comedy. Except it doesn't quite have the characteristics of a farce, it doesn't have the pace of a farce. There are a handful of visual gags, but I wouldn't really characterize it as slapstick. Ultimately, what this ends up feeling like is a sort of a variety approach to comedy, where we find opportunities to shoehorn in stand-up sets and audience engagement that goes on for a decent amount of time. We then cut to scenes that are so full of exposition and character backstory and so light on humour that you question whether they're actually just trying to be scenes from a serious drama. And then occasionally, Carrie Hope Fletcher will sing something and it turns into a musical, which is fine, which is lovely. The songs themselves are a little bit basic. They remind me of the Battle of Trafalgar musical that was performed at my primary school once. He was the great Horatio Nelson. How do I remember that? I wasn't even in the show. He beat the French, he beat the lot, he beat them all. So it's this sort of a muddled pantomime of a thing that we ultimately end up with. Let me tell you what I thought of this show, if it's not already becoming clear. So with the best of intentions and with the greatest hope for this actually being something that I could find a way to enjoy, this was really difficult. Because you can forgive almost anything about a show if it's funny, especially a comedy. Needless to say, like, all this needed to do was to make people raucously laugh, and there were sections of the play where we did. Let's not get our words twisted here. There are moments that are funny, and I've heard people saying, oh, we laughed so much. There are pull quotes about the thing. Let me see what it says on this flyer here. London's funniest show. That's an out-and-out lie. I'm not settling for that one. But also, that's not a quote, it just says that on the top of the flyer, so no one actually said that. Sunday Express said, I haven't laughed so much in ages. I have no idea what they've been doing with their time. And then the other quotes here are about Al Murray and Mel Gierdeoyc. We'll get to their performances. But basically, what ended up happening was we had the scenes where Al Murray and Mel Gierdeoyc were on stage, and those were really funny. They found a way to make those really funny, especially the moments where it just became a vehicle for them to do stand-up and interact with audience members and do something fresh and do something off the cuff and base jokes and running jokes and callbacks on the things that audience members would say during audience participation moments. Those were great, but they didn't need the vehicle of a play and the construct of a play around them to get to those moments. Like, if you want to see those two people do stand-up, just watch them do stand-up. Because this whole thing, for all of the different elements that it brings together, is not greater than the sum of its parts. It's an odd confusion of different tones. It's great to hear Carrie Hope Fletcher singing something, but this audience haven't come here for musical theatre, nor are the songs particularly funny. The songs themselves, like I said, they're decent. There's a wit to their lyrics, but not enough to actually make you laugh. A comedy song is a difficult thing to write, to get someone laughing during a musical theatre moment where an audience is trained to sort of just sit and listen and clap politely at the end of it. These lyrics don't begin to approach hilarious enough to get us actually laughing. There's a song at the end of the show which is all about a sort of a casual British racism, where they're talking about all of the other countries that we're better than, and that's the whole concept for the song. And that concept is enough to make you maybe lightly chuckle once at how incredulous it is, but it certainly doesn't have us laughing line after line after line, and the fact that it goes on for so long starts to feel, unironically, a little bit racist. It's like, I get that you've written this to be tongue-in-cheek, but it still feels a little bit like a UKIP conference. But the biggest offence are these scenes between the co-conspirators where they're plotting to steal the crown jewels that just feel like these historical retellings, and there are clearly attempts at jokes in there, but we literally weren't laughing. I didn't laugh much for the duration of the thing. No one laughed in these scenes. And a comedy play that has us just staring at it and wondering what's going on for that much time is really failing at its job. You start to become acutely aware of the passage of time, and it becomes really conspicuous that nobody's laughed in a while. And in terms of the written jokes in the script, it was an awful lot of low-hanging fruit, but it was at least like all the low-hanging fruit. Like, we got every single low-hanging apple on that one low-hanging tree. We have visual toilet humour that shouldn't have even been an individual gag, but somehow became a 2-minute joke. There was a lot of adult humour and sexual references. It was all just a little baffling and puzzling, and unfortunately not nearly as funny as it thought that it was. I'm trying to look for positives here, and I quite liked the set design by Michael Taylor. We had this sort of rotating set piece that could show a few different rooms. That was done quite cleverly. Ultimately, I think a big problem with the writing and the composition of this show is that it didn't bring all of these characters together enough. We had King Charles II, who was played by Al Murray, and then we had a different character who was played by Al Murray in the heist sequences, but it felt like here was the king who was just waiting and ultimately wasn't really necessarily important to the plot because he only once interacts with Colonel Blood. And then we go to this other area where the rest of the action is going on, where we know nobody is going to say anything funny. I don't even know if we need to meet King Charles II as a character until right at the end, whether we just want to have the stealing of the crown jewels and then we meet him when he comes to actually interact with this plot. That would be the sensible way of putting this together if you were writing a reasonably well-structured play, but then we wouldn't get any jokes right up until we meet him at the end, because that whole heist sequence, it's just not funny. When they actually come to steal the crown jewels, there's a lot of wit and ingenuity as to how they depict the chase sequence afterwards. They bring up a big map and they have these puppets that are moved around, showing them sort of chasing each other with the characters' faces. It reminded me of the car chase sequence in Romantics Anonymous at the Bristol Old Vic, and that was charming, but again, just a completely different means of storytelling than what we'd had previously. This was a play that kept trying to do different things, and like, oh, what if we were now a musical? What if we were now a pantomime? What if we now did toilet humour? What if we now did jokes for adults? What if we now did jokes for kids? What if we now just didn't do jokes for a while and see if no one noticed? Honestly, I could go on, but there's not much more to say other than the fatal flaw of this show is for so much of it, it just isn't funny. For minutes at a time, in 3 tiers of the Garrick Theatre in the West End, nobody laughed. So let's talk about these performances. Al Murray plays King Charles II. He's appeared on stage a lot in his capacity as a comedian with his character, the pub landlord, but this is sort of his theatrical debut in terms of acting, which it is kind of. He doesn't disappear into these characters, but he characterizes them well enough. He's very well attired as King Charles II. He has some lovely heeled golden shoes. He has a big wig. He's very regal and pompous, and these are probably the highlight moments of the play when he is interacting with the audience, when he's doing this crowd work. It's hilarious. He has a lot to play off of because he's just trying to flirt with and seduce women, and he's making fun of the peasants if he wants to, and he's talking about where people have travelled from, and there's a lot of geographical callbacks and references. He also plays the 77-year-old man who is in charge of looking after the crown jewels. I feel like he could have more fun with this if he was to characterize it as being older. I'm thinking about Tom Eden's incredible physical performance as the very frail elderly butler in the play One Man, Two Governors. If he was to just do something like that, he doesn't feel 77 years old, and that's a big part of how incredulous this whole concept is, that the crown jewels were looked after by this one incredibly old man. The most acting I think he does is right at the end when, after he's been stabbed and nearly murdered as this old man but inexplicably survived, he's walking around and he's in so much pain constantly while his family are just happily going about selling a lot of merchandise around his attempted murder. That's a really tickling moment, and he performs that very well. Opposite him is the equally wonderful Mel Gierdeoyc. She is the shining light in this because any moment that she's on stage, she just brings so much humour and so much levity, and she can spin anything into a joke. She is so quick, she is so witty, she does so well with audience interaction. The two of them have a brilliant rapport on stage as well. There's a sequence at the top of the second act where she's playing a French ambassador character who is going to be in attendance at the upcoming coronation, and this sort of flirtatious rivalry between them is delicious, the way they play off of each other, and watching her trying to make people laugh and watching her corpsing on stage is brilliant, is absolutely fantastic. She also plays Al Murray's wife when he is playing the guy looking after the crown jewels, and again, I just feel like this could be a little bit more characterized. Then we have Carrie Hope Fletcher. Now, she's coming at this from a very different background because she is a musical theatre actress, and she also plays two different characters. She plays the Lady of the Bedchamber, who is one of the current enjoyments of King Charles II, in which capacity she basically just sings songs about him, songs that are filled with double entendre, songs that she sings well and capably but just aren't really funny enough to make us laugh, and also songs that don't really stretch her or showcase her well as a performer. We know that Carrie Hope Fletcher can sing, and what she sings best is a sort of an earnest ballad. Look at the Cinderella material. Look at On My Own from Les Mis. This is where Carrie Hope Fletcher really shines. She's a very heartfelt performer, but ironically in this show, she can't really make this material sing. We need someone with more of a comedy background who's someone more obviously funny, like a Jodie Jacobs or a Rebecca Hines, or even like a musical comedian like Vicky Stone. I just think in this kind of a show, it's comedy that needs to be at the forefront, and the singing matters a little bit less. It's not like audience members are going to say, well, it wasn't really funny, but she sang it very nicely, when it's not a song that they really cared about, when it's just an incidental moment of music that just feels like killing time before we can get back to the excuse of a play that justifies stand-up. Carrie's other character is the daughter of the 77-year-old man who is looking after the crown jewels, and she's sort of stubborn and angry. It's a little bit Wednesday Addams-esque, but it's not a particularly fun character. Again, the material is just not funny, and she commits to it well enough, but when the material isn't funny in the first place, unless you're the kind of performer who is so naturally funny that you can turn anything into easy comedy, which is something that Mel and Al know how to do because that's their background, then it's just not going to work. Someone whose performance I did really enjoy, Adonis Sadiq. He was already scene stealing, just turning the set around, just pushing this rotating set piece in the middle and sort of grinning buffoonishly to the audience. He played two characters, but the best by far was this attendant servant who was nervously chatting with King Charles II and trying to tell him whatever it was that he wanted to hear. He was fantastic in this role. There wasn't very much for him to do, but utterly scene-stealing and very funny. Footman, that's the word. He played a footman. The biggest offences came from the co-conspirators against the crown. You had Aidan McArdle as Colonel Blood, you had Neil Morissey as Captain Perot, you had Joe Thomas as Colonel Blood's son, and then Tanvi Vamani as an actress who was meant to be involved in this co-conspiracy and ended up in a relationship with him. This was all a little bit puzzling. Aidan McArdle, despite the little glint in his eye, never really brought any kind of comedy to this, and Neil Morissey was this completely baffling presence on stage who was neither quite intense or serious enough to be playing up the drama of it all, which is what Aidan McArdle was doing. He seemed to just be in a BBC adaptation of this historical epic, nor was Neil funny enough to feel like he was in a parody of the thing. I'm just not sure he understood, just as I didn't understand, in all fairness, what it was that this play was meant to be. But the worst that they were tonally confused and a little bland. Joe Thomas as Colonel Blood's son was actively a little bit harder to watch. It wasn't a million miles from the character that he played in the TV show The In-Betweeners. In fact, it was scarcely a few yards away from that character. And both he and Tanvi Vamani really had the most dreadful parts of this material. Her character may have been the most offensive. She was just brash and aggressive, and I think she was meant to represent contemporary ideas and wokeness, potentially, but this came across in such a harsh and misunderstood way. Neither of them have the depth or the character motivation to be playing real people, nor did they have enough eccentricities and colour to them to be playing these clownish caricatures. They're neither realistic nor funny, and they don't belong in either a serious play or a comedic parody. But those have been my thoughts on The Crown Jewels at the Garrick Theatre in the West End. Like I said, this play is soon to be going on tour. What little it has to its material really needs these strong comedic performances and I don't think everyone that appeared in the London version is actually doing all of the tour dates, so I guess bear that in mind when booking tickets. This being said, I have heard from a few friends that they know people who went to see this and enjoyed it. Like I said before, let us know in the comment section down below if you went to see this play and what you thought of it. Thank you so much for watching today's review video. I hope that you enjoyed. If you did, make sure to subscribe to my theatre-themed YouTube channel for many more theatre reviews coming very soon. I hope that everyone is staying safe and that you have a stagey day. For 10 more seconds, I'm MickeyJoTheatre. Oh my god, hey. Thanks for watching, have a stagey day. Subscribe!